Zoe Campos was just 18 years old when her life, filled with quiet dreams and fierce compassion, crossed an invisible line, a line that would vanish her from the world she loved so deeply. Born on September 4th, 1995, Zoe was the youngest of three siblings, a bright light raised in a life of constant movement. From the sun-drenched streets of Honolulu to the bustling suburbs of Round Rock, Texas, and then to the crowded coastlines of San Diego. But eventually, the Campos family planted roots in Lubbock, Texas, just as everything started to fracture. Her parents' separation left cracks in Zoe's world at a young age. The kind of cracks you can't always see, but that change you forever. Yet Zoe didn't harden. Instead, she became someone who saved things, lost things, wounded animals, stray pets, broken creatures that needed a home. She made it her mission to heal them, no matter how messy or inconvenient it was. Zoe wasn't just another teenager wandering through life. She was driven, focused, the kind of young woman who could have chosen any path, a future in animal care, or maybe in the tough, grease-stained world of automotive mechanics that she was just starting to fall in love with. She was responsible, avoided trouble, stayed grounded. In a world filled with chaos, Zoe was the calm, and maybe that's exactly why what happened to her feels so gut-wrenchingly wrong. Because no matter how careful you are, sometimes the darkness finds you anyway. Tonight on True Crimes, by Dominic, we're going to unravel the mind-bending disappearance of Zoe Campos, a case that left a family shattered, a community haunted, and 1,000 unanswered questions hanging in the air. Was it fate, a tragic mistake, or something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface of ordinary life? Before we dive deeper, if you're drawn to true crime stories that uncover the human heart behind every headline, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. New stories drop every 2 days here on True Crimes by Dominic. Now back to Zoe's story and the chilling discovery that changed everything. In the early days of the investigation, a chilling comment sparked a frantic news search. They're not going to find anything unless they move the concrete. That chilling line set off a frenzy. Investigators, who had already spent hours digging through grass, dirt, and piles of old animal bones, suddenly shifted into high gear. Something wasn't right. Something was hidden. And when they finally unearthed it, the thing they had secretly been dreading it was far worse than anyone could have imagined. Human remains. Dental records would later confirm the heartbreaking truth. It was Zoe Campos. But finding her body was just the beginning. Untangling the twisted chain of events that led to her death, that was a different nightmare altogether. How does an ordinary night, a night filled with family, friends, and laughter, spiral into tragedy so quickly? And more importantly, how do you ever really know who you can trust? Now let's dive back into it. It all started on a chilly night in November 2013. One simple evening that should have been full of comfort and normalcy, but ended in the blink of an eye. November 17, 2013 was busy for Zoe, but in the best kind of way. She spent most of the day at home, and as evening rolled around, she made plans to visit her friend April, who had just had a baby. And if you knew Zoe, you knew she had a soft spot for babies and animals alike. There was no way she was going to miss the chance to meet the newest little addition to her circle. April had a small gathering at her house, a few friends coming by to see the baby, catch up, laugh, and celebrate new life. It was a simple, sweet night. Zoe stayed until around 9 p.m., then said her goodbyes, but her night wasn't over yet. After leaving April's, she met up with her sister Savannah and Savannah's kids for a family dinner. They planned to rent a movie, cozy up at Savannah's place, and just have a relaxing night together. For Zoe, it was the perfect evening. Everything she loved in one night. Family, food, babies, movies, laughter. She wasn't out partying. She wasn't meeting strangers. She was with the people she trusted most. When the movie ended, everyone drifted off to bed. Zoe was supposed to crash on the couch, safe and sound. But by the next morning, November 18th, Savannah stepped out of her bedroom to get ready for work, and Zoe was gone. At first, Savannah tried to stay calm. Maybe Zoe had left early for some reason. Maybe she had an appointment or an errand. But when Savannah called Zoe's phone and got no answer, and noticed that Zoe's car was also missing, The unease started to creep in. Savannah's next move was to call their mom, Melinda, and that's when the puzzle pieces started falling into a shape they didn't like. Melinda had been working late at a local bar the night before when she got a text from Zoe around 2:30 a.m. Nothing too alarming. Zoe had simply asked if Melinda needed a ride home. Since Melinda's car was in the shop, she welcomed the offer. She stepped outside to wait for her daughter. But Zoe never showed up. Melinda waited for nearly half an hour, calling and texting Zoe, but there was no response. Still, she wasn't immediately panicked. Maybe Zoe had fallen asleep or gotten sidetracked. So Melinda stayed overnight at a friend's house nearby. It wasn't until Savannah's call that morning that real panic set in. Zoe wasn't answering anyone. No one had seen her. No hospitals reported any incidents involving her. It was as if she had just vanished into the night. By 5 p.m. that day, Melinda and Savannah called the police. But instead of launching into action, the authorities brushed them off, suggesting that maybe Zoe had just run away or was taking a break. They insisted on waiting the usual 24 hours before filing a missing persons report. Melinda and Savannah knew better. Zoe wasn't that kind of girl. She had no reason to run away. She had a life she loved. But the police stuck to their routine, dragging their feet while precious time slipped away. They did put out an APB for Zoe's Lincoln Town car, though, and surprisingly, they didn't have to wait long. The very next day, Zoe's aunt Monica spotted her car on the road, but it wasn't Zoe behind the wheel. Through the dark tint of the windows, Monica glimpsed a figure, a young man, probably in his 20s, wearing a hoodie. Not Zoe. Panic surged through her. Monica and her son tried to follow the car, desperate to keep it in sight, but they lost it when it made a sharp turn and disappeared. Later, the car was found abandoned at Driftwood Apartments, the very complex where Zoe lived. Police searched the vehicle. Zoe wasn't inside, but the items they did find were disturbing. Duct tape, Zoe's black jacket, a mystery sweatshirt that didn't belong to her, a phone charger. Every object hinted at something dark, something violent, but still, no Zoe. Forensics were ordered on the clothing, while detectives dug into Zoe's phone records. They traced her last known activity to an area near Lowry Field, a part of town infamous for drug deals, crime, and sex work. This revelation sent shockwaves through Zoe's family. She had no ties to that kind of life. She wasn't the type to hang around dangerous places in the middle of the night. So the question burned. Why was Zoe's phone last active there? Was she lured, kidnapped, or worse? Investigators started questioning everyone close to Zoe. First up was her ex-boyfriend, Joe. But Joe had a rock-solid alibi. There was no evidence linking him to Zoe's disappearance, only real concern for her safety. Next, they talked to Jacob, another ex. Jacob was the classic bad boy type, always finding trouble. He had cheated on Zoe once, leading to their breakup. But despite some lingering suspicion, Jacob also had a strong alibi for the night she vanished. Then came a name that raised eyebrows. Ben, a man Zoe's mother had once dated. Phone records showed Zoe contacted Ben the night she went missing. Police pulled him in for questioning and a polygraph, but again, nothing. Ben had an alibi. He cooperated fully. Another dead end. It seemed like the case was stalling until detectives turned their attention back to April's gathering. They wanted to re-interview everyone who had been at that small party. That's when the name Carlos Rodriguez surfaced. Carlos wasn't someone Zoe knew well, just a loose acquaintance through mutual friends. They knew each other through mutual friends. Carlos's first statement to police was simple. He and Zoe left the gathering around the same time, and he didn't see her after that. It sounded believable, but something about his demeanor didn't sit right with detectives. They had no evidence yet, but they quietly kept Carlos on their radar. 2 weeks later, on December 9th, they brought Carlos back in for a second interview, this time under oath. And that's when his story changed. Completely. Carlos admitted he had lied. He and Zoe had made plans that night, plans he left out the first time. After leaving the gathering, they added each other on Facebook and began chatting. Carlos invited Zoe over to his place to smoke illegal substances. He said Zoe agreed, But when he didn't have anything to offer, she supposedly left to go find some. But she never returned. Now, anyone who knew Zoe would tell you this version of events made zero sense. Zoe wasn't involved in drugs. She wasn't the kind of person who would wander the streets at 3 a.m. looking for them. And the final nail in the coffin? Carlos's home was located less than a mile from Lowry Field, the same dangerous area where Zoe's phone last pinged. Still, without physical evidence, detectives couldn't charge him. All they could do was keep pressing, hoping Carlos would slip up, reveal more, crack under pressure. The clock was ticking, and somewhere out there, the truth about Zoe's fate was waiting to be uncovered. Meanwhile, while detectives kept piecing the case together, they also searched Carlos's old house. But by the time they got there, a lot had changed. Carlos had moved out long ago, and the trail was growing colder by the day. It was like trying to find a ghost. But remember that male sweatshirt they found in Zoe's car? Yeah, it turned out that sweatshirt belonged to Carlos. And here's the kicker: forensic testing revealed Zoe's DNA on it. There was no more hiding. Carlos had been with Zoe the night she vanished. That was undeniable now. But even with that bombshell, the investigation dragged on for years. Zoe disappeared in November 2013, and now it was creeping past the 4-year mark. And Carlos? He was being questioned again, only this time, the setting was different. He wasn't walking free anymore. No, now he was sitting inside the Lubbock County Correctional Center. Why? Well, it turns out Carlos had been arrested for stalking another ex-girlfriend. Yeah, just when you thought he couldn't seem any worse, it painted an even darker picture of the kind of man Carlos really was. And it gets more infuriating. For 4 long years, Carlos had been sitting on critical information about Zoe. The police knew he was hiding something. They could feel it, but he just kept his mouth shut. That finally started to change in July 2018. An inmate from the same facility came forward with something chilling. He told detectives that while talking about the search at Carlos's old house, Carlos had slipped up and said something haunting. They won't find anything unless they move the concrete. That was it, the breakthrough detectives had been waiting for. Immediately, they raced back to Carlos's former property. With cadaver dogs leading the way, they focused on a particular spot in the backyard. It was an area that, oddly enough, seemed like it might have been covered in concrete once, although officially, no one said for sure whether they found any there. Still, they dug, and when they did, they unearthed bones. Detectives froze. Could it finally be Zoe? The remains were rushed off for testing, but then, devastating news: the bones weren't human, they belonged to an animal. You can only imagine the crushing blow that must have been for investigators. Years of dead ends. A glimmer of hope, only for it to turn out to be nothing. It was heartbreaking. But the police didn't give up. They decided to play a psychological game with Carlos. They went back to question him, casually mentioning the discovery of bones at his old house, hoping to stir a reaction. And boy, did they get one. Right before their eyes, Carlos seemed to shut down. He started panicking, though he tried to stay composed. Then he did something telling. He calmly asked for a lawyer and said he wouldn't be talking anymore, as if he'd ever truly been cooperative. And here's the wild part: when they confronted him about the bones, the detectives themselves still didn't know yet that they were animal bones. The test results hadn't even come back. They were bluffing, and it worked. Carlos's reaction confirmed it. He was hiding something horrible. The truth: Zoe wasn't just some name in a cold case file anymore. They knew she had never left that backyard. 5 agonizing years after Zoe Campos vanished, Carlos finally cracked. He thought the game was over, that the police had already found Zoe's remains. And so, he confessed. The story he told was chilling. Zoe and Carlos had agreed to meet at his house that night. Some reports say things got a little intimate between them, but somewhere along the line they smoked cigarettes laced with a dangerous, illegal chemical. Now, whether Zoe smoked willingly or Carlos forced it on her, we may never know for sure. But what's certain is that the substance wasn't anything mild. It was something that could warp your entire perception of reality. We're talking terrifying hallucinations, full-blown psychosis. Carlos claimed that after they smoked, he looked at Zoe, and instead of seeing her, he said he saw a demon staring back at him. In a drug-fueled panic, he attacked her, struck her, killed her with his bare hands. Once he realized she was dead, Carlos dug a shallow grave right there in his backyard and buried her. But it doesn't end there. Months later, Carlos came back, dug Zoe back up, and buried her deeper to keep anyone from finding her. And here's a thing that's almost impossible to stomach. If Carlos was truly so out of his mind from the drugs, how was he clear-headed enough to hide her body and then later rebury it even deeper? Something about his story just doesn't add up. The reality is brutal. Carlos made choice after choice after choice. No drug forced his hands to commit murder. No hallucination handed him a shovel. Instead of seeking help or coming clean, he chose to cover up what he did. He chose to bury Zoe, then let her family suffer in a never-ending nightmare for 5 long years. But finally, justice caught up with him. On November 16, 2018, after Carlos led investigators to the right spot, they dug once again. And this time, what they found was no animal. Dental records confirmed it. The remains were those of 18-year-old Zoe Campos. Carlos Rodriguez was arrested and charged with her murder. Even then, he pleaded not guilty. Imagine that after dragging Zoe's family through hell, after wasting years of investigation, after confessing to the media, he still clung to his lies in court. He even had the audacity to write a letter to the media, filled with apologies, vivid details of what happened, and whining about the burden of keeping this secret. Carlos begged for forgiveness. He told the Campos family not to seek revenge. He said, "Just remember, don't seek revenge. Seek justice. Don't hate your enemies. Love them and forgive them." I'm sorry, but what? You murder someone's daughter, hide her body like garbage, and then you dare to preach forgiveness? It's almost beyond comprehension. But finally, the day of reckoning arrived. In 2022, Carlos Rodriguez stood trial for Zoe's murder, and it took the jury just 14 minutes. Yes, 14 to find him guilty and sentence him to life in prison. The damage he left behind, though, will last a lifetime. When Zoe's family got the news that her remains were recovered, it hit them like a tidal wave. 5 years of not knowing, 5 years of praying, hoping, fearing the worst. It had all come crashing down. Her mother, Melinda, and her sister were shattered. Melinda said that planning her daughter's funeral was the hardest thing she's ever had to do. No parent should ever have to bury their child, especially not like this. But at least now Zoe was finally home. On December 4th, 2018, friends, family, and loved ones gathered to say their final goodbyes. They remembered Zoe as a bright light, someone who loved animals, dreamed of becoming a mechanic, and made life a little sweeter for everyone who knew her. Zoe's smile, her laughter, her warmth, they're all missed every single day. Melinda continues to grieve, praying that no other parent ever knows the pain she's been through. And here at True Crimes by Dominic, we honor Zoe's memory, and we hope her family can find some measure of peace after enduring so much unimaginable heartbreak. There really are no words that can fully capture the heartbreak of Zoe's story. It's devastating to think how one reckless choice, one night fueled by dangerous substances, ended in a tragedy that shattered so many lives. Even if Carlos never set out to hurt Zoe, it's a brutal reminder that once you step into that world, there's no telling the destruction that might follow. Drugs don't just destroy the people who use them, they tear apart everyone around them too. Zoe was full of dreams, full of life, and all of that was stolen from her in a moment of senseless violence, a moment that Carlos can never undo, no matter how many empty apologies he gives. Her family had to endure 5 long years of unanswered prayers and unimaginable grief, and even though justice was finally served, nothing could ever bring Zoe back. Stories like this force us to ask, at what point do choices stop being accidents and start becoming crimes? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe Carlos's hallucinations excuse what he did? even a little? Or should he be held fully responsible, no matter what? If this case struck a chord with you, please take a second to like this video, subscribe, and share it with others who care about seeking truth and justice. It's completely free, and it really helps True Crimes by Dominic continue to bring you these real, raw stories. New true crime cases drop every 2 days here, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Make sure to turn on those notifications so you're the first to know when a new story goes live. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and always remember, behind every headline is a family forever changed. This is True Crimes by Dominic, and I'll see you in the next one.